Filmcore.
Hey guys, welcome to another Filmcore movie review podcast. This one is for The Platform, which is a movie that has been released on Netflix. With me, I have Alex Kirschenbaum.
Hello.
Hey, and yeah, let's get right into this. The Platform is a thriller that holds basically a pretty heavy-handed mirror to the inequality within our own capitalistic society. Trapped in a vertical prison, our main character, Goreng, quickly learns that in this system there are three types of people: the ones above, the ones below, and the ones who fall. This one was directed by Spanish director Galder Gazetelu Urrutia. Sorry if I butchered that.
I feel like that was pretty good. I think you crushed it, Armani. That was pretty good.
Oh, thanks. Essentially, he's kind of like an unknown as far as like in the Western world or for like the English speakers. But this movie in particular was nominated for several Goya Awards.
What's that? So Goya's like sci-fi.
It's basically it's a Spanish movie awards in Spain. So it definitely is getting a lot of buzz, and I think definitely this is going to when we open, Goreng wakes up, and we quickly dive into the hierarchical structure thanks to his cellmate, Mr. Trimagashi. Essentially, within their prisons that they're in, each room is stacked upon another, and the food for each prisoner comes through a hole in the center of the room, down each level. So basically, if you're on floor 1, you get first dibs on the food, and if you're on floor 50, you're the 50th group to get access to the food. But when it gets to you, it's probably not much left.
Right, and there are like 250. There are two people per floor, and they estimate that there are 250 floors, but it's sort of unclear.
Yes, and it seems that so basically you spend 30 days on the level that you're assigned that month, and it seems to be pretty random. Goreng's cellmate, Trimagashi, has been on floor 72, 26, 78, 43, 11, 79, 32, 8, and 132. So really, it just seems like they just skip around at random. So you could wake up on a pretty good floor, like 11 or 8, or on a really bad floor, like anything past 60. Essentially, it seems to be pretty bad. One of the interesting things about this is by the time the food gets to their floor, it's been pretty picked over and it's kind of a mess. But the food is actually really thoughtfully prepared. But, by the time it gets to them, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, right. It's all they ask people during their sort of intake interviews what their favorite dish is, and so I think we have a dish for every occupant, so 500-ish people, but the people on the first 50 or so floors are so greedy that there's usually not enough beyond the 50th or 60th floor, and so that's when we learned that. Sometimes cellmates have to resort to extreme measures to sate themselves.
Yes. And we learned, it's hinted upon that Trimagashi himself has had to murder a cellmate for food when he was on the lowest floor, like 132. But then we later learned that his cellmate actually died and he didn't kill him. So, but of course he ate him anyway. Really, what are your first impressions of this? So just in our first 10 minutes.
The first 10 minutes I thought were pretty boring, but I figured it was set up and we were going to go somewhere. I was wrong. I was very wrong. It was incredibly boring the whole time, but it did go somewhere in the last 15 minutes. But it was quite boring. What did you think? Wait, what did you think?
Initially, I felt like it was pretty slow, and a lot of the sort of symbolism and themes were pretty obvious and heavy-handed. But one thing that did stick out to me was the set design. This movie itself was really inspired by The Cube. I don't know if you saw that movie. Basically, it's a really simplified set. There, it's really more focused on sort of the human experience and sort of psychologically what these kind of prisons or these types of situations do to you. And it really explores sort of society, how easy it is for us to break down from sort of our more traditional or more fair values. And that essentially if you get the impression that if people, sort of rationed the food more, that more people could eat. But of course, everyone's just really in it for themselves. So you try and make the best of whatever level you're on. I really loved the set design. I loved how clean and sleek everything was. The production designer on this was as Zinye Urigoitia. I felt like they really did an amazing job with everything. I loved how just like minimal these huts were, and it really allowed you just to really focus on like the minimal backdrops themselves of each cell just being like very like sleek poured concrete lets you really focus on like the decadence of like the food, for example.
Sure, it looked nice. If it was a 3-minute music video with the story, it could have been much more effective. Like, it was just horribly told as a narrative. Just incredibly boring, a very belabored point, incredibly simple, not a lot of twists that you couldn't see coming a billion miles away. We can get into that. Yeah.
On that note, it was actually nominated, the Goya Award that it was nominated for was Best Screenplay.
No, that's fucking ridiculous. So the next 10 minutes are obviously Trimagashi turns on Goring and he tries to eat him.
Yeah, so essentially Goring wakes up tied up on the next level that him and Trimagashi are assigned to, and literally Trimagashi has tied him up because at this point he's like an old man and he feels like if they have to start like an actual fight to eat each other, that Goring is definitely going to overpower him.
And then Goring is saved by this mysterious woman who, Miharu, who's kind of crazy and she's killing her way through the platforms trying to find her missing daughter. And then Goring sort of forms a bit of an emotional bond with Miharu, who leaves him alive and gives him pieces of tiramisu to eat.
So this is like the first time that Goring has had to eat another person, and it definitely emotionally takes a toll on him because later on throughout the movie, Trimagashi essentially sort of acts as sort of his conscience throughout the rest of his experience.
Sort of like the malevolent conscience.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I've read a bunch of stories about like, you know, like settlers having to resort to eating other people in their camp.
Like the Donner Party, you know, that got stranded in the winter.
Yeah, exactly. Taking the Hastings Pass, if I remember correctly, going to California. So yeah, it's pretty gnarly. I definitely.
Yeah, the setup of the system doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like he's like a voluntary prisoner, and then at the end of it, there's some sort of certification, and it's like a year-long program. And the Tiramisu guy is also his time is about to be up. He's like a month away or something once they get to level 171, and then he's going to get some sort of certification and some sort of job. But what the point of any of this is never made clear. The metaphor is very clear, abundantly clear, and they keep hammering it in our heads. But like the setup of this world is just sort of unfinished, and like who these people are as characters, besides sort of these broad outlines, is really not explained. And so we're spending so much time with these people that we don't care about, don't know about, and don't care to know about. And yeah, it's relentlessly dull. So for such a like intense and violent movie that's about, you know, like sort of the faults of the trickle down economy model, like it's relentlessly uninteresting.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like I think it'd be more interesting if like these were actual like hardened prisoners. I mean, we learned that Trimagashi there because he accidentally killed someone by throwing a TV out of his window. But
right,
it seems like if you're a volunteer prisoner like Goring, that it seems like more of like a tap out option would be available to you.
Right. Why is the treatment the same?
Yeah,
makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm next to this person who literally killed someone else, so I really didn't understand that idea, and also didn't know why he would need a full year to be sort of trapped in the system.
He's reading Don Quixote. Is it gonna take him a year to read Don Quixote?
I mean,
like really?
Also, you could read Don Quixote at home.
Yeah, like what's so distracting about his normal civilian life?
Yeah, I don't know. And what's even weirder is what makes this even more confusing is when he awakens the next month on level 33. And that's where he meets Emoguri, who is the secretary who works for the administration that manages the prison itself. And essentially, she's also an idealist who believes that, you know, if we ration the food correctly, everyone in this prison would get the food. But we don't understand why she's there either. She apparently seems to have volunteered, but she seems to have sort of been blind to how the system has truly been affecting the prisoners. And again, she seems like the kind of person who should have some sort of like, come get me out of here card under her sleeves.
Yeah, her plan also is ineffective, but also ill thought out. And it's weird that, but we find out why she's volunteered. Basically, she works for a broken system, and she realizes that. And so when she discovers that she has terminal cancer, she decides to try to save the system by communicating her rationing message to people as she gets transferred across levels while she's dying.
Yeah, so basically she tries to pull an Elizabeth Warren by calmly explaining the system of rationing to the ones below. So essentially you get the food, you make a plate of rations for the ones below you, and so everyone basically should be able to eat if someone's making appropriate rations for them. But of course, the inmates below don't want to hear it. And it's not until like Goring threatens to basically fecally ruin their food that they decide to comply. So but overall it seems to be working until Miharu shows up and kills the one item that Emoguri brought with her. Each prisoner, of course, each prisoner gets one item to bring with them. We know that Goring brought a book, Trimagashi brought a knife, and Emoguri brought a dog, which I thought was immediately the dumbest thing to bring with you. And of course, when Miharu begins riding down through the platforms to look for her kid, she kills the dog immediately for food. Which, I mean, I felt definitely being a dog owner myself, I felt bad, but also felt like that was a horrible choice anyway. But yeah, so like you mentioned, Emoguri is trying to change the system. And she explains that there's supposed to be 200 levels, but when she and Goring wake up on their next level assignment and they're on level 202 with countless levels below them, she realizes that she's been just lied to at every turn about what this prison really is. And she decides to basically, end it there. And through hanging herself, Goring is able to survive the next month on 202.
Because he eats her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you say in our notes here, you say, by not jumping to her death, like previous inmates, she ensures that Goring will have something to get him through the month because he won't be able to get any food on the platform by the time he reaches level 202.
Exactly. I mean, through that, she's able to, sort of her last, she says in her own words, through her ghost words, essentially, that it was sort of her last gift to him. Well, right. But things turn around for Goring when he goes to sleep and the next month wakes up on level 6. And it's honestly even hard to enjoy being on that level after sort of everything that he's seen thus far. He gets a really positive cellmate named Bahara, who his one item is a rope, and he tries to climb up to the next through the next 5 levels to hopefully reach the top. But of course, the people above them are dicks and choose not to help him. All right, so they change course and decide to ride the platform to the lowest levels in an attempt to distribute the food fairly, breaking the system, and then riding the platform all the way back up to the top at the end. About midway, they get some sage advice from another prisoner who says, hey, not only do you need to go up there, but you also need to make sure we have symbolic gesture, which is having one luxury item be untouched as sort of an FU to the administration above. All of this is, so basically as they ride each level, they ration the food as they go, manage to fend off other prisoners, and everything seems to be going okay until they get to a floor where Miharu is being stabbed to death. Goring and Bahara try and save her, but she gets stabbed to death anyway, and they both are fatally wounded as they reach the final floor, which is the 333rd, where they find Miharu's child. And instead of the luxury panna cotta they were going to send up as sort of their message to the administration, they decide to send up the child instead.
And then for some reason, Goring decides not to go with her?
Yeah, I mean, I guess at that point, he's just sort of instead of Goring was initially going to ride the platform back up, but he decides that he's kind of dying anyway, and this child is the final message that needs to be sent.
But why not ride with the kid to see what's up there on the first floor? Make like a stand.
Yeah, I think that's the final thing is like I definitely wanted to see like what the reactions of the people who found the child were. I mean, especially because like as a symbol, like none of the other inmates, like I think it would have been much more like sort of dramatic or effective if like the platform rose slowly and each level could see like, hey, at the bottom level, when you guys were all stuffing your face, there was a child here who could have used the food the most. But what seems weird to me is that one, the child was like totally fine down there. I only wish that we could have seen the top, and we don't really know ultimately like what her being there, how it's going to affect the society or the structure.
Yeah, won't they just kill her immediately?
Yeah.
Like, what does it matter? I don't. It's a flawed plan.
Yeah, this is also what's kind of weird is like so we're assuming that Miharu managed to make it all the way down to 333rd floor. Like repeatedly to care for this child, and this child was never moved to another floor.
Yeah,
which seems odd to me, considering like how long we were there for at least 5 months, so this kid would have had to technically have been moved at some point.
Right.
I mean, initially, I think this as a concept, like if this was like a short film, I think it would have worked. But the fact is that they had to stretch this out over an entire like hour and a half runtime and then wrap it up the way they did. It definitely felt a little like unfinished, but also too long, simultaneously too long.
Yeah. They focus on the wrong stuff. Like they obviously should have gotten to the last 20 minutes much sooner, and they should have shown like some sort of battle or some sort of attempted coup on the first floor once they ride the thing back up, and we should have gotten some backstory as to who these people were, what the system was, why it had to be this way, or why the government thought this was the logical solution. Happened.
I mean, I never thought I was
pretty good, and like the idea is it makes much more sense. This sort of stratified hierarchical train.
Yeah, where they're like literally running because they believe that the world is uninhabitable, which is totally different from like volunteering to go into like, would you volunteer to go into the Snowpiercer train? No.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
So that's the part that I think that's the part that definitely feels like a little weird. But I mean, overall, like, okay, would you rate this out of 4 stars, and would you recommend it?
No, absolutely not. I'd say 1 star.
Wow. Okay, I would say 2. I mean, it had some moments that I enjoyed, but definitely I think this movie was too long and could have been easily condensed into 30 minutes.
Into a 30-minute short?
Yeah, it definitely could have been a 30-minute shorter, like you mentioned, even like a music video at this point. I think that the set design was great. The editing was great, honestly. I feel like the performances are great. It's just like they didn't have that much to work with. And the concept itself had too many plot holes for it to be fully carried throughout a full feature length, essentially.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for me, I just don't weigh like the visuals. Like I remember seeing The Master and people said, "Oh man, it was so beautiful." And sure, but I still hated it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on that train with you for The Master.
Yeah, like the technical elements, were professional grade. But I just don't think it was just that interesting. It was also underlit. It was very dark.
Yeah, I mean, we could say the crew did their job.
Except the gaffer.
Fucking genie. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to hopefully Netflix like really bringing in, pushing more Spanish speaking or just like, different alternate language speaking. I hate saying alternate, but like pushing movies that aren't just like English speaking into the forefront, because Netflix definitely has like that platform to do so. And we've seen with movies like Parasite, like we definitely, American audiences will watch it. English speaking audiences will watch them if they are good. And it's unfortunate that this one wasn't that great, but I hope that it still represents like a trend of what's to come, like through Netflix.
Yeah, Parasite was so great. And it's another movie about sort of futuristic, fatalistic hierarchy. It's such a better movie. It's the same guy, speaking of Snowpiercer, it's Bong Joon-ho again. He seemed to track through these stories about sort of marginalized people rising up. I think if you gave him this idea, he would have immediately said, okay, why is this platform a thing? And can we not have the volunteer element
aspect of it?
I mean, it's way too similar to Snowpiercer. He just would have said no, probably. It's way too similar.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, it's definitely too simple without more twists or without more character motivations. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, as like a film study itself, I think it's successful. But yeah, maybe I'm definitely looking for the director's next one. But this one, I think we can sort of sweep under the rug.
It's too bad because this is like a great moment with the coronavirus stuff. Like, there's not, crazy rationing happening yet, but certainly there is some, right, with like the craze when it comes to soaps and toilet paper in grocery stores. They're sort of limiting what you can take at a time.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's like a little bit of this in society, right? But at least this is necessitated by something. This is motivated in the real world. They really could have stood to take a couple years to think about the platform and then let this coronavirus thing happen and then tackled the story.
I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, this movie was filmed before that, so they couldn't have that.
Their loss.
Couldn't have that foresight, but
yeah. Well, yeah, disappointing story, but I agree with you that it's cool Netflix sort of moved this movie to the front of the line in terms of hyping it on their homepage and stuff. A foreign thriller. That's cool. It's cool in principle. Just not in practice this time.
Well, yeah. But yeah, we're definitely, we're in tough times right now, so we're definitely going to keep cranking out these reviews for you guys.
We shall.
Check out our Parasite review, by the way. It's a pretty sweet one. It's up on our site, and we'll catch you at the next one.